snowpacker grandparents, Mike and Amalia. Married in the early 1880s. She was 18 when she was married. Had just come here a few years ago with her parents. And married. Mike was a well-established businessman there in Plattsmouth, and we have a directory that tells about the many things that he was involved in. He was in his 40s, I think, when they were married. Another picture I've been eager to not leave out is a picture of my father, Claude Snowbacker. As I told you, he was a farmed with horses when he first began his farming. This is probably around 1914.
Was that unusual to farm with 3 horses?
You know, we've studied over that a whole lot, and Glenn thinks that there's a 4th horse back there.
Oh, that doesn't show. Okay.
It barely shows. We have often talked about it being unusual with the 3 horses, and Glenn says, well, he thinks there's a 4th horse. He's a little look good. Another picture that sort of fits in here came as a country school teacher from Nebraska in 1929. Bill Piper has pointed out the interesting fact that this was a 47-star flag. And we studied about that a while and then figured out this picture would have been taken from when my father's younger brothers and sisters were going to school in this Prairie Belle School where Albert came to teach. I've been sorry all through the years that Albert and I didn't buy that schoolhouse, keep it, and preserve the bell. The bell went to a school in Newton, Kansas. The school was removed by a family who turned it into a garage. They found that place is over southeast of Colby. This next picture I want to show because it shows Grandmother Ulrich with her 3 oldest Snowbacker sons. One is the younger, an Ulrich, but to my right is Will, who was the oldest of the family, Snowbacker family. He was the one who became the lawyer. Next, on this left-hand side, my left-hand side, is my father, Claude, and then next to him is Henry, who became a banker in Bay City. In the middle is Grandmother Ulrich, and her son, Philip Ulrich. I guess it's appropriate then to show the steel wheel tractors that Albert, I think, is on the 2nd tractor. He worked for my father the 2 summers before we were married. See, that would have been the summer of 1930 and the summer of 1931. As I think I've mentioned, my father was looking at managing wheat farming for the Garveys and the Fergusons. So, to show one day how many combines they had in the fields, wasn't really efficient to put them all in one field, but they lined them up this day. Put 12 combines in the one field, very, very close to our farm home. That's 12. This one, Albert is on one of these combines. 6 combines lined up right southwest of our home, so you can see the barn and the machine shop that I told about earlier that burned in the fire. Albert's on one of those tractors. Just off the rest of that family of 11. One became a nurse. The twins were called to serve in the World War I. One in the Navy, one in the Army, which was, what shall I say, a trying experience for my grandmother.
What were the twins' names?
Twins were John and George Ulrich. George was injured very severely in the war, and not until penicillin was discovered was he able to return to work. And then he worked for several years as a bookkeeper for an oil company in Houston, Texas. one of the boys then trained in the Army, but stayed here at Camp Funston, which I guess became Riley. What is Riley? Camp Riley, down at Riley.
Fort Riley.
Fort Riley, okay. Then returned to the farm. I believe that name's the 11. Of course, my father became a prominent farmer in northwest Kansas. As I told you, he didn't pursue any school studies past the 6th grade. But in 1909, he went to Kansas State, where he enrolled in a short agricultural course. Came home very excited about farming, wheat farming, and later was a great promoter of summer fallowing. He also was a good mathematician. Lots of time he and his brother Henry would call each other on the telephone to work out math problems. As I said, my father learned a lot from that short course. He came back home and did a lot of experimenting, put into practice what he had learned and kept experimenting. He was also very interested in the world as a total. In the years that he was handicapped and lived with us, he had his own house, but he came to our home for his meals. He was very interested in watching all of the activity out of his window, and often would come over and ask me to take him around to see the fields as the fellows were working there. And he and Albert would have a good time in the evening when Albert would come in and talk about what had been done, what needed to be done, and they were a great team doing the farm work. He spent a lot of time reading the newspapers and was very well aware of what was going on in the world. He often talked about the importance of wheat to help feed the hungry in the world. One thing I've forgotten to mention as I was talking about my growing up girls, we had fine music in our home when we lived in Colby, and later took that Edison to the farm when Albert and I lived there. There was exceptionally nice classical music on those big, thick Edison records. It was a wind-up record recording machine, record playing, and I guess somewhere or another when you have to go and wind it up and turn it off when it's played the record, you maybe take time to appreciate it. I had an opportunity in high school to play the flute for only 2 years, so I didn't become proficient enough to follow it, and I'm sorry, because I've often thought now if I'd had probably 2 more years, I could have played the flute well enough so I could play with the community orchestra these days. So I guess we better go back now to the dirty turkeys again.
Turkeys.
In 1935, the dirt was blowing so badly that the railroad had to clean the tracks for the trains to continue their regular runs. In 1935, Sharon was born. We had this nice, robust, bouncing baby girl. She was so contented and such a, what shall I say, fat baby that she
Well,
almost able to take care of herself.
She weighed
11 pounds. She weighed 11 pounds. We had hired a girl at that time to help, and because Sharon was a real good baby, it was a lot easier. We were able to do the washing, ironing, taking care of several bunk beds, cooking men 3 times a day.
Did you have bunkhouses at that
Yes,
time for
yes,
the
we
men?
did. Oh, yes. Some of them were even railroad cars that we'd taken out to the farm for men to sleep in. A couple of them were. And others were what we call sheep shacks that during the 30s, we imported sheep from the mountains. They'd come in the fall on the trains, and when Ronald and Sharon sometimes we'd take them out of school in the afternoon and go over to Levant, unload the sheep at the railroad station there, and drive the sheep out to a pasture. This was when the wheat started growing later in the 40s. I'm really getting ahead of myself to tell it, but I'll tell it while I'm thinking about that lush growth in the fall, in the 40s. Was excellent feed for the sheep, and then we passed them about 3 months, and that's where we had quite a bit of use of these, what we call bunk. They were on bunkhouses. They were on wheels, and we'd move them from field to field so that the shepherd could stay out there and stay with the sheep. They would fence a quarter section probably, and keep the sheep on that quarter until they'd eat the wheat, all the green wheat off, and move over to another quarter. But then in the summertime, those bunkhouses would be in the yard for the men to sleep in. John Slyer, we should talk about him. He was one of our principal shepherds, would stay out, and they would take food, supplies, and coal for his coal burner to keep the shack warm. Of course, then one year we had a severe storm, and somebody was just mentioning that yesterday, on Monday at the Historical Society board meeting. They said, do you know what you were doing 40 years ago? And some of us had to think a while, but he said, I would be one who would remember. We had just finished adding on to our house, adding on the living room, and then closed the dining room, had changed windows, so we used to have barn squares you'd push back and forth to let air in.
And you
put in the solid windows.
A thermal window.
And the day after we got those enclosed is the day the blizzard struck, and that was 40 years ago, earlier this week. And had it been the day before, we would have had a house clear full of snow. It was a real, the blizzard that people keep talking about. Well, that year is the year that lots of people lost cattle, and we lost lots of sheep. They wandered away, got out of their electric fence. Sometimes they were found in ditches. People would be walking along and find a hole in the snow, and that was where the sheep were still alive. Lambs were still alive down in a snowbank, but their breathing had created a little bit of a hole there, and so they got a little bit of air down, and they'd find them sometimes when they were real skinny from having lived there for days.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an experience. And then another story I better tell now. It's out of place in sequence. Is when Ronald got to take his first trip with his dad on the train with several carloads of sheep to Omaha to the market, and then they flew that night from Omaha to Kansas City. I suppose they came home on the train a day or so later. But I have a nice letter stored someplace where Ronald wrote about being on the plane, what a thrill that was. And I think Jerry Berry even went with them on the train, so Ronald had company.